Yes. I'd like to call this meeting of Bureau Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Roletta.
Here.
Mr. Blake. Mr. Bug.
Here.
Mr. Koss.
Here.
Mrs. Floyd.
Here.
Mr. Frazier.
Here.
Ms. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Marmee.
Present.
And Mr. Rath.
Here. We have 9 here who are present this evening. Would you please rise for the invocation by Mrs. Floyd?
Would you bow your heads, please? Almighty God, we ask that you be with the Kurt Harden family that had fire over the weekend. We thank you for the nice fall weather that we have had, and we hope it continues for a while. We ask that you be with our troops, especially those in Mosul this time. Help our country throughout this contentious election season. Be with our country, our state, our city. Help guide us as we make decisions for the city. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything? Mrs. Floyd?
I'd like to excuse Jeremy Blake, who's on a trip for Denison University.
Motion by Mrs. Floyd, second by Mr. Marmee. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Blake is excused. Next, we have the minutes of our October 3rd, 2016 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Rath. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have one report this evening from standing committees from finance. Without objection, that will be received and filed. We have 2 reports from city officials this evening, one from our auditor, Stephen Johnson, the operating report for the period ending September 30th, 2016, and one from Barb Jobs, our city tax administrator, the income tax revenue for a period ending September 30th, 2016. Without objection, those will be received and filed. We have 3 communications this evening, one from Park National Bank, notifying us of their annual inspection of the mausoleum at Cedar Hill Cemetery, one from Mayor Hall, appointing Administrative Secretary Jennifer Bubb as his designee for purposes of compliance with public record training requirement, and one from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, a new permit for the new Kroger, which is opening November 2nd, and one from the Planning Commission Director David Rhodes. He recommends the council accept the dedication of the streets as stated in Ordinance 16-41. Without objection, those 4 will be received and filed. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. That's the time for you to be heard. It's not a debate with council, but an opportunity for you to let us know what you're thinking about it. Do we have anybody for this first section? Seeing none, we'll move on to ordinances on the first reading, 16-41.
Ordinance 16-41 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Koss, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson, an ordinance accepting the dedication to the public use of the streets in Park Ridge subdivision, Phase 2, Section 1A and Section 2, and setting the development surety for said additions.
16-41 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next, we'll get a resolutions on the second reading, 16-87.
Resolution 16-87 by Mr. Koss, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, a 1-year use of funds action plan along with an application for fiscal year 2017 Federal Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG, as required by 24 CFR Part 91.220 for various programs related to housing and community development.
You've heard the second reading of 16-87. What is your wish?
President,
Mrs. Floyd?
we make a motion to accept 16-87.
Motion by Mrs. Floyd, second by Mr. Koss. Is there any discussion on 16-87?
This is something that we do on a yearly basis. So.
Mrs. Floyd, anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Bug?
Yes.
Mr. Koss?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
No.
And Mr. Rath?
Yes.
16-87 passes 8-1. Next, we have 16-88.
Resolution 16-88 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Koss, Mr. Johnson, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for fiscal year 2016 Edward Byrne Justice Assistant Grant, JAG-LE funding.
You've heard the second reading of 16-88. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmon.
make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-88.
Motion by Mr. Marmon,
Second.
second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 16-88? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rapp?
Yes. 16-88 passes 9-0. Next, we move to resolutions on the first reading, 16-89.
Resolution 16-89 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
16 days.
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmon.
I make a motion to waive the two-day reading rule on Resolution 16-89.
Motion to waive the
Second.
two-day reading rule by Mr. Marmon. Second. Second by Mr. Bud. Mr. Marmon.
Yes, there are some bills that need to be paid, so this needs to be expedited.
Mr. Marmon. Autumn, please call the roll to waive the two-day reading rule.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rapp?
Yes. Two-day reading rule is waived, Mr. Marmon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-89.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmon.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. I was trying to get you in there, Mr. Johnson. Is there any discussion on 16-89? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd? Mr. Frazier? Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rapp?
Yes. 16-89 passes 9-0. And that concludes our legislation for this evening. Thank you. Next, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Do we have anyone? Do we have anyone from administration this evening? Our Honorable Law Director. Mayor Hall. Pass. And we move to miscellaneous. Mr. Roletta. Thanks, I'll pass. Mr. Blake, he's not here. Mr. Bub. I'll pass. Mr. Cost.
The only thing I've got is I'd like to give out a special thanks for the Eyes of Freedom exhibit that was at the Elks. It was just an incredible display, and I hope a lot of people got to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. This is Mr. Wells, Personnel Committee. Mrs. Floyd?
Call a street committee, and for Mr. Blake, I'll call an economic development committee. Just remind everybody that Safe Trick or Treat is a week and a half away on Thursday, October 27th, from 5 to 6:30 on the square. Fun time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Frazier?
I'm excited for the opening of the new Kroger's as well as the opening of the Cherry Valley Road Exchange. It's nice to see the continued development in the downtown and the greater Newark area. And hopefully we'll continue to see it grow over the next year as well. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall?
Thank you, I'll pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmon?
Yes, I need to call a finance committee meeting. And just as a note for those of you that may not be paying attention to some of those other teams in college football, if you do pay attention to Illinois, there is a Newark Catholic graduate who's the starting quarterback now, and he's doing fairly well, Chase Crouch. So Newark, Ohio gets mentioned on the air now when he's being televised, and it's very nice to hear that someone locally has done something and succeeded, and just want to congratulate his family on that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. Mr. Rapp?
I'll call a service committee meeting, and I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Just a few odds and ends. There is no meeting. This is a 5-Monday month, so there's no meeting on the 24th. The next committee meeting will be October 31st. Our next full council meeting, that will be at 5:30 here in this room. Our next full council meeting, November 7th, 7 o'clock, also here in this room. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Cost, second by Mr. Rapp. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.